Famcast Media, bitch.
I mean, fuck it. We might as well just open up the can of worms while we're at it.
Is there news?
I obviously, if you're watching this program, number one, you're a wrestling fan. Number two, you're pretty sad. But the fact that you're with us here tonight, you obviously know what happened with Vince McMahon. It's something that we definitely have to talk about. Okay, Janelle Grant, I believe her name is, was an assistant to Vince McMahon, and she's now suing WWE, Vince McMahon, for sexual assault, and I also believe trafficking. Human trafficking. Human trafficking. Wow. So, I mean, pretty crazy situation. There was also John Laurinaitis implicated in this scenario. Brock Lesnar potentially. I'm not going to really say too much about that because I don't know all the details on that, and I don't want Brock Lesnar to beat me up or something. But definitely John Laurinaitis named in there. And also talk of toys, sexual toys, dildos, if you will, that were named after WWE wrestlers that were on the roster as well.
Wow.
You can only imagine.
I missed that one.
Yeah. You can only imagine what stuff was being, put out there online on X, on social media of all kind. I mean, some pretty ridiculous memes and stuff like that, but very, very crazy scenario. I mean, we all kind of knew that something was going on, right? We all kind of knew that things have happened, right? NDAs, all this other stuff. Your mind tends to go a little wild. Stories and books, shoot interviews, all this kind of stuff. But now to have this kind of information put out there, and from what I'm understanding, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's pretty fucking wild to hear, guys. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on like what you guys thought when you heard about this.
I mean, to be honest with you, I thought it was just another story, like just to get at Vince McMahon, another way to berate him. And then the more I dug into it, the more I read, it felt like this was completely new. This was one of those things where it was like, holy shit, like this is not like fake news or anything. This actually happened. And I felt just shock and awe. I was like, wow, this is like not at all what I expected. And immediately I thought to myself, this is not as simple as the guy who won the 04 Rumble, like erasing him from wrestling. This is erasing Vince from wrestling would erase essentially the entire Attitude Era. It's almost like if you have that in the past, we're just not going to talk about it anymore. But there are so many things that came to mind to me, like, why did Stephanie leave the biz? Why did Shane leave the biz? Why are all of these records being set? I just got flooded with all of these different things. And I'm still processing what's going on, but it just feels like a lot of it's starting to make sense. That's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can be accused of. I think human trafficking is about as bad as it can get. So for a second there, I was really like, what is going on? And when I heard the story, it made a little bit more sense as to what the charges were, or what the accusations were. We've not known, but we've heard for a long time that Vince has had some interesting appetites and had some, done some things that obviously we can't condone. And this is just another chapter in the story, I guess. I always hoped that it, stuff wasn't true, but this seems pretty credible.
Yeah.
It's crazy, unfortunate that it did happen. For me personally, I'm not surprised. I think anybody who's been involved in the wrestling business in any type of way is honestly not surprised by this. I've talked to people that I know personally that are either still in the business or have been in the business, and they all told me the same thing. Yeah, not surprised. It's unfortunate, I think, that the reputation of a wrestling promoter has gotten to be this sleazy, this messed up now, where it's not really that big of a deal. I think maybe we okayed it for so long, like people in wrestling, because it was a part of the norm. And I mean, I it's very difficult to take something out of the business that has been there for a long time. That's all I'm saying. It really, really is. It really is. And I think the more you unearth from what Vince has done, the more you're gonna find a lot of people that you don't want to see on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
think that's the risk that you run with these types of things. It's no secret, you can go back on the archives here. I'm a big Vince McMahon fan. I think Vince
Yeah.
McMahon's contributions to professional wrestling are huge. I admire parts of him as a person, and I say and specify parts of him as a person, not the entirety of who Vince McMahon is, not what he's being accused of. I think that's wrong on any account. Anybody who does those types of things obviously will go through a trial, and whatever the punishment is, they have to face those consequences. It's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's no room in our society for that type of behavior anymore. There isn't. Plain and fucking simple. And if you don't like it, stop watching the fucking podcast right now. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
I just it's sad. It's sad to me. And I think Lou, I think you bring up a really good point there about, are we gonna have to Chris Benoit him, I guess is
Yeah.
really the best way to fucking say it. But are we gonna have to Chris Benoit Vince McMahon? Like, are we gonna find out so much about this guy that we're literally gonna have to not acknowledge his existence? I mean, how do you commemorate Steve Austin now? How do you celebrate Steve
Yeah.
Austin? How do you do anything for Stone Cold without Vince McMahon?
I
You
was
know,
thinking the same thing.
what are you gonna do? You're gonna mute his commentary? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to really think about here. But I just think that at the end of the day, what's what they've done, specifically what Nick Khan has done, and I think even maybe, and I don't know, you guys let me know what you think about this here, but I think Vince specifically had the awareness that something like this might have happened, that something like this would come to light sooner or later. And because of that, he felt the need to basically gear them towards a sale so that he could remove himself from the situation and the company and what it means to his family and what it means to the people that are invested in the talent and the fans continues without him.
Mm.
What do you guys think?
No, I think that's a great point. It makes sense to me because Vince has always kind of been ahead of the curve. Definitely makes sense to me in terms of I got to get out. I'm gonna get caught. You know what I mean? And it definitely makes a lot of sense. It's odd that just a couple of weeks ago, Cat Williams was on a podcast and he said the year of 2024 is when a lot of truths will be revealed, and we are here in 2024, and immediately one of the billionaires of the world, his truths are being revealed. It's unfortunate.
Right, because I want to touch on something Pat said. He's talking about, like you said, you admire some parts of him as a person, like the fact that they've helped so many people with rehab, and I know he has given people money to buy their houses and just pay me back whenever, and I think this is something I've thought for a long time. People aren't just good or bad. They're three-dimensional things, and obviously something like this can't be erased by any amount of good deeds. But I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, and I think it's great you actually shine some light on that as well. I mean, these are little known things about Vince, and I think that Vince, for a big chunk of maybe what he did as a wrestling promoter and as the owner of the WWF/E, I think he did a lot of good for a lot of different people. And not enough people talk about it. And I think Vince didn't want it to be talked about. I think Vince wanted the emphasis and the focus to be on the product. Or maybe he might have had the awareness to say, hey, you know what? I'm not the nicest guy in the world. I don't want to be, I don't want people to think I'm doing this because I'm trying to get some dirt off my conscience. Maybe he might have thought about it that way. Who knows? But I agree. I mean, I look at it almost like, everybody has like one relative who might not be the nicest guy or something, like an uncle who might be racist or something. And you're like, geez, you're an asshole, with your racist nonsense. But you know what? You're my uncle, and there's parts of you that are actually really good when you're not, spitting out this nonsense. And you think about the good, and that's what you remember. You don't remember the racist nonsense. You don't remember the ignorance that your uncle might have had towards that, but you remember the little bit of good, and you try and learn from that. You know what I'm saying? And I think with Vince, definitely had a lot of issues. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of like power control stuff. Like it seems very like control driven. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not a fucking therapist, so I'm not going to continue to hypothesize any further, but there's things about Vince that, you can't admire, things like that, his upbringing, him looking for his father when he was a kid, getting into the wrestling business, just learning how to do it on the fly, making enough money to the point where like Vince grew up in a trailer park with his mom and his stepdad, where his stepdad would beat the shit out of him all the time. Okay. And Vince weathered that. Vince got to meet his father, got to learn about the business, got to the point where he could buy the business, took it from being a regional product to a global product that spans fucking generations. Insane. Absolutely insane. But again, he's flawed. He's a human being. How do you guys think they're going to handle his legacy moving forward? And again, I mean, we don't really know this full scope of everything, but given what we do know, how do you think the company is going to handle Vince McMahon moving forward?
Erase him, I guess.
I think they'll try their best to erase him. I think it's impossible, as much as involvement as he has in some of the most famous moments. Like you look at all the way back to WrestleMania 1 or Hogan Andre, like he's on commentary. The Attitude Era, it's him and Austin every week. Yeah. Everything. Like, it's going to be, it's damn near impossible. Well, unless they're going to go back and dub over all that stuff, which I can't.
Well, here's the problem.